Commence primary ignition.
I'm just not the hero type, clearly.
What a piece of junk.
Enterprise, this is the captain.
I have a bad feeling about this.
It's all part of the plan.
Engage.
Welcome back to Podcast 2 for 1. I'm your host, Donovan Thompson, with my co-host,
Daniel Wingfield.
and today is episode 198 of Podcast 2 for 1, youtube.com/2 for 1 studios. Guys, it's the best place to consume all the content, and if you didn't know, listeners, and let's be honest, you probably did not, we are sponsored by Kapow Comics, located at 4047 East Kill Avenue in Sherwood, Arkansas, that they have comic books, collectibles, graphic novels, and of course, special guest appearances throughout the year.
Kapow.
Kapow. Daniel, it's 198, and we are talking Marvel Studios X-Men 97 on Disney Plus. The first 3 episodes are out. And just to give you a real quick intro for me, during the 90s, 97, I think 95, 97 is when this show came out, maybe 94. And, I was in kindergarten for first couple of grades. I would come home. I'd go get dropped off at my grandma's house, my great grandma, and she would have chicken noodle soup. It was like a tube TV where you turn the channel like manually, and about 3:30 every day, the Spider-Man the animated series would be on. But around 3:28, X-Men would be on, the animated series, and I'd be like, "Fuck, get the fuck off my TV! I want to watch Spider-Man." And I never ever liked watching X-Men. I just never. I could not tell you a single episode growing up. I never really liked the X-Men as a kid. I, of course, liked the X-Men movies as they come out. I've, of course, grown to appreciate and love a lot of the characters in the X-Men as I've increased my comic knowledge. I've seen all the X-Men movies ad nauseum multiple times. And so when this was announced, I thought it was a really cool thing. I was like, yes, that's really great for the fans. I'll have no idea what's going on. I just want Spider-Man 98 or whatever it will be called. And, that being said, I watched these 3 episodes and I dig it. It's not hard, a big leap to know how it ended the last time.
Right.
And, yeah, I mean, it's, I catch myself sometimes checking my phone.
Sure.
Those kind of things. But just for a 30-minute show of decent, I like the animation personally. I know people don't like it. I like it.
Yeah, I do too.
And anyway, I overall enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, X-Men is a weird thing for me because, I think X-Men and Spider-Man were the first kind of superheroes I was aware of, just because of what you said. They were the superheroes that were on TV at home. And for me, because we didn't have cable, but they came on Fox, right? I think Fox is what played
Fox
them.
Kids.
Yeah, so it was like the one time of
Channel
a week
3, baby,
that I actually had cartoons to watch. You know what I mean? Because we didn't have Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon or anything. So I ate it up just because it was cartoons. I had cartoons to watch, and that felt special. I felt much more attached to Spider-Man. I remember watching episodes of X-Men. But I don't remember feeling super invested in it as much as I remember being super invested in the Spider. When Mary Jane turns out to be a fucking Hydro Man clone, that murdered my little boy heart. That was just such one of the most tragic things I'd ever experienced. You know what I mean? That's in media.
Hey, if you want to see me hype, for the most hype for anything that we've ever covered on this podcast over almost 200 episodes, is to tell me that there's going to be a sequel to Spider-Man the Animated Series.
Yeah.
That thing is I love Batman the Animated Series, but for me, and I can't argue with people saying that it's a better show, probably.
Yeah.
But I love Spider-Man way more than the Batman animated show, just because that's what I watched.
And I think part of it is the Spider-Man show is more serialized. You'd have 3 or 4 episodes that are in a row to be continued. The whole Venom arc was 4 or 5 episodes in a row. I feel the whole Mary Jane Hydro Man arc, or the second one, is 3 or 4 episodes in a row. So you were and animated series, I think they did a couple to be continues, but there wasn't as many arcs that spanned multiple episodes that I recall.
I have no idea.
I know
I've
they
never
returned to
seen-
them later in Batman, right? Like they'd be like, "Oh, here's a Joker episode," and then later they might reference it in a few episodes later. But as far as like,
Oh, you're talking about
sequential-
Batman.
yeah,
Yeah. There's a couple of like to be continued. I feel like Spider-Man was a little longer. Like they would
yeah,
do
there was longer sequences of it, right?
Yeah, I
and,
thought they
and
did
maybe
3,
that's
4.
why it was more easy to get involved in because you were like, the episode would end, and you're just like, all I can think about is what happens next. You know what I mean? And will I be home to watch it on time because we don't have DVR? And like it's like as a kid, it's like I don't control my schedule. My parents take me everywhere, you know. Anyway, so back to X-Men. I was coming into it with kind of just like it'll be a fun nostalgia trip. And I think it is. I think like it is. I like the animation. I think it looks great. I mean, I think it looks like my childhood animation, and I like that. You know what I mean? It may just be a nostalgia thing. Yes, there are probably prettier styles or with more details or stuff like that, but like,
Well, I think the issue is the frame rate that people are having with it.
Oh, okay.
It has like it feels like a 16 frames per second versus
Sure.
like or whatever. And I mean, it feels like X-Men, X-Men and Spider-Man, all those, it felt like they were smoother, you know?
yeah.
I don't know why they chose that. I mean, I think once you get past that and you start watching it, you just kind of get used to it.
It felt like it didn't register to me. It felt like normal cartoons, and maybe I don't know exactly why that is, but I mean I can see what you're saying a little bit, but like to me that just feels like that's what cartoons are. Like sometimes cartoons are like sometimes they vary between frame rates. You know what I mean? Throughout, like depending on what they're doing, a lot of the time.
Yeah, and I may be wrong on that. I mean, cartoons I don't know what the standard is, and they may just live at like 16, and this one may be like somewhere like 12 or something. It's
Sure.
different. I don't know exactly the science behind it yet. I haven't looked into it, but for this show, but it
Yeah.
is feel different, and part of it is too because I know they're using example like 3D assets, which
Okay.
a lot of shows do now.
Oh, I mean that started happening in the early 2000s. I still remember like
I mean, even
you'd have a
Spider-Man.
TV show that's all cartoon and then one element is 3D. It's very obvious now. It's very
Well,
obvious.
Yeah, well, I mean, Spider-Man animated series, the buildings would be like 3D sometimes.
That's right.
And like,
Yeah, that's
you know
right.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, but anyway, I think it looks really good. I personally I love the art style. Like just a single frame of it, I'm like that's a perfect for me animated art style.
Yeah.
And you know, so I can't complain about it. But also again, I mean I mean it when I say this. I don't think I've ever seen an episode of
Sure.
the original X-Men show. I've seen pieces of them. I don't think I've seen a full episode all the way through.
Sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, just going back to the show itself. I mean, I'm enjoying it. I mean, I think, like I said, the intricacy of the anime, like what they're doing with animation, is really fun. Like the Sinestro or Mr. Sinister episode, I think was the most recent one, right? That had some
Yeah.
really fun animation, like illusory magic type stuff going on in it, right?
It felt very anime to me because like I've
sure.
been dabbling with like a show called Demon Slayer, which is a very popular anime.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about it. Yeah.
And a lot of like the those kind of things felt like just ripped right out of Demon Slayer.
okay.
So it's interesting, and this is something we can talk about is it is trying to keep this like 97 like aesthetic
Right.
with the clothes, those kind of things, but then it does feel like it is kind of updated in terms of like
It's more ambitious. I mean, I mean, honestly, they wouldn't have had the budget to do that kind of stuff in the 90s, probably. Like that kind of anime, like the animation sequence where like the floor's dropping out and they're all, and maybe they could have done it, but it would have been more bare bones, right? Like less detail or less intricate or less moving, like something. And so I
Yeah.
think it just feels
Mhm.
kind of like, you know, like Invincible, right? Like Invincible has like, you know, these sections of animation that probably took 10 times as long as the rest of the episode to do, right? Because it's so much is going on. There's guts and like and that's the fun of Invincible, is that you have these action scenes and you just don't know who's going to get ripped in half in some gruesome, ridiculous way. You know, that's kind of the fun of it, or part of it. And I feel like that is a little bit here, except that this does feel firmly like made for kids or made for like preteen, like young teenager era, like at the level of like just like I think the dialogue's written really well. I think it's voice acted really well, but it all is kind of your generic superhero level, like just action dialogue, right? It's nothing special in terms of like what they're saying. Like it's not groundbreaking. The story of it doesn't feel like super innovative in any way, other than like maybe like Magneto's a good guy now, but we'll get to that. But like it's doing kind of the standard cookie cutter approach of just dialogue and characters, but it's doing it to my degree like perfectly. Like they're nailing like what this is and like the style of it, of the storytelling and all that. They're doing it perfectly, I think. It all feels well. It all comes off well. All the characters feel kind of natural to themselves. You know what I mean? That in a way that like they're all likable and all feel distinct. And so I'm enjoying that. I think there is this element of like now when we have Invincible, my favorite version of this show is a probably aged up version, right? Like my favorite version of X-Men 97 is one that's made for our age, that has swearing and death and like all these kinds of things. And it doesn't make sense. Like it doesn't make sense that like it's the same universe that were happening to some degree, right? Like it wouldn't logically flow that these are the same X-Men from the 90s if they're like there's blood and guts and swearing all of a sudden. That might just break, whatever. But it's just the realization that like I love animation and I love watching old kids shows sometimes, but I am definitely like I am much more drawn to the ones that are kind of tackling more adult themes and tackling more real life things in it. Like that's really gonna hook me in. And so for these, like I think you're right, they're nice little self-contained episodes. But maybe that's a little bit of it to me too. Like maybe if it was more just pure serial, I might enjoy it more, because I think when you're squeezing a 3-act structure into a 30-minute episode, it can feel rushed a bit, especially in the middle. You know what I mean? Like even for example, the Mr. Sinister episode, when we have like we find out that the Jean Grey that's been there for a while is not the real Jean Grey. She's like a Sinister clone or whatever, right? The turn from her going full bad, because like for part of the episode she's just like, yeah, I'm an evil goblin queen or whatever, and then by the end of it she's like, actually no, I'm a good person still. That needed another episode in between. Like that needed to be a 2-episode arc for her, for that to not feel rushed, and it felt a little bit rushed in that way. So there is this kind of like every episode ends with somewhat of a bow on it, and that this feels a little archaic storytelling wise in a way. And I'm just those are kind of my only complaints, but I feel like but like I can't fault it for what it's doing, because they are making this for kids. Like they are trying to make this so that kids can watch it, and they are trying to make it so it's honoring of the old one, even down to format. So I get it. It's just more just like preference, I think, if anything.
I do feel like it may clock out to be like 27 minutes or something without the credits, which credit to Marvel.
I didn't even notice that the credits were that long.
Well, maybe they're not. Maybe they're like 2 minutes or a minute. But I'm saying, like, point is, like, it feels like in the past these Marvel shows are like they're like 42 minutes and like 12 of them are credits.
Sure.
And or maybe like 7 or 8. But I feel like it's a long time, because like they're doing like movie level credits for a TV show.
Right. Yeah.
Which I'm just like, geez. Okay, but I feel like I feel like it has enough room for a episode of animation. Like I feel like we're in a place with Invincible, we're getting an hour per episode, and maybe we're kind of used to that for a second.
Yeah.
I do feel like these threads are carrying over a little bit, and it is more comic booky in the way they're structuring things. Or like the last 10 seconds is literally a big cliffhanger, and sometimes it's like a big deal, and sometimes it's not a big deal. It's just perspective, right? The opening of the next episode.
For context, looks like credits are about 4 minutes each episode, so not ridiculous. That seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah, it's not too bad. I mean, and you have to keep in mind, like, the actual length of the old show of any cartoon was 21 minutes. So it's getting like you're getting like an extra
28, like an extra 5 or 6 minutes probably.
An extra 5 minutes, which is like a 25% more per episode. Essentially.
Yeah, that goes a long way when you're only at 21, right? You can do a lot more.
Yeah. Exactly. Interesting.
Well, they begin each credit sequence with that kind of like character card thing where they show each of the X-Men and like list their powers or whatever. So it is like, that makes it a little longer too, because of that. You're right. There are threads that go through. Like obviously, like Magneto and like his arc, we can get into him, like is the main thread of the show is Magneto's gone good, or I mean, we think, you know what I mean, that basically the Charles sacrifice at the end of X-Men, which I don't remember at all. I'm sure I didn't see that. It is like what it inspired him to carry on, I guess, you know, his vision for a mutant and human, you know, harmony or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, part of this too. We'll say part of this too, real quick, is just you know, this is 90s cartoon level character development in terms of Invincible. I feel like it might take a couple episodes to kind of to get like a character to come around, but we're just getting Magneto is like, you know, like it took 5 seasons where he's just fucking things up for the X-Men.
Yeah.
And then in the first episode, after that, he's like, you know, I'm going to just like, I'm going to do Charles' thing now. Like, I'm going to do it this way. And so, but my point is, like, it's not like we're not seeing that change in terms of before he made that decision, I don't think, right? We're just seeing that he's made the decision. And of course, we're going to see him, how is he going to deal with that in his own way? But it still feels more cartoonish, right?
Was Magneto always a sexy vampire daddy in the original one? Because like that is the look that they just chose. Like that is what he looks like. If you just saw his costume and you took the M off, you would think vampire person. That's a vampire. Like why else would anyone else dress like that? I mean, I don't
think he had the M. I don't think he had the M. I'm sure he had his helmet off sometimes in the animated show, but I mean, they're doing that. That is like a visual character change, right? To reinforce his new version of his character. So like he's a good guy. He doesn't have to. He shouldn't have to wear the helmet because
that part's fine with me. I think
the only reason he was supposed to, the only reason he technically was wearing it to begin with is because of Charles, and Charles is gone now. Right. I mean, there's an argument he should be wearing it because of Jean Grey and all the other telepaths out there, but
I think it's mainly the like bicep high gloves, and then it looks 90s. Like he's just wearing leather everything. I don't know. The costume doesn't work for me. Just to be honest, I just don't. It's hard for me to take him seriously a little bit sometimes. In it.
Well, what's interesting to me, real quick, as an X-Men, as an X-Men fan, I'll get back to Magneto in a second. Weirdly, I had read. I've kind of been dabbling in Spider-Man lately in terms of like I haven't been keeping up with it.
Sure.
And the one thing I read in the last year had to do with Madeline Pryor and the Goblin Queen. Queen, whatever. And I was like, I had no idea this. I mean, I tell you, I don't know a lot of X-Men, but I had no idea. And when I was watching this, I was like, is this Madeline Pryor from like the one thing I've read about like whatever that I read 6 months ago? And it was. And what's interesting too is like, you know, I don't know if you know this and you haven't seen Deadpool 2 yet. This isn't spoilers, I don't think. They never tell you in Deadpool 2, but the baby that they're having, that's Cable. That's
oh yeah, I did know that. So I was aware of that. Yeah.
So that I mean,
but it's like, but I looked at it and it's like Cable's character is actually like from the future. He like comes back to eventually. It's like it's basically like it's the whole Trunks thing from Dragon Ball Z. It's like the older version of him comes back, and that's really the hero we're familiar with. Is the older that comes back in time. Right?
Well, yeah, it's not the baby, but but
it's not like he grows up and then that's the character. It's like he comes back in time as an older man. Is always the design I've seen of him. He looks more like Nick Fury, honestly.
Yeah. Well, see, I had thought Cable was in the original show. This is where people can kind of correct me or fact check me.
Yes, anyway.
And I looked up like some stuff like is Cable in the X-Men show, and I saw a few screen grabs, but I was like, is this real? I don't know. I guess they were just trying to tie up that thread that they maybe set up earlier. Maybe she was pregnant at the end of the last season in season 5. I thought it would have been cool. Maybe if Cable's already showed up, that maybe this would not have been cool. But I thought when that portal closed, another portal would open up immediately, you know, and Cable would walk out on the other side. So I kind of thought that was going to happen. And also, I didn't realize, and maybe I just don't know the comics. I kind of just thought they had the baby, and then, you know, he grew up, and then Apocalypse happened or whatever, and then he went back in time. I didn't realize they gave him into the future. I thought he got infected with like the virus when he was older. I don't know, so I need to do some research on Cable and like kind of get my ducks in a row there. Yeah. But nonetheless, I mean, there's some also, and here's the thing about X-Men. X-Men is just like an allegory or metaphor for racism, right? So
Right.
that there's an opportunity
Or
to
xenophobia, maybe. Yeah.
yeah, and so there's an opportunity to talk about just they're touching on real political events, so or real political ideology and just people's
Yeah.
perspective, and there's no more heated or debated time of like really anything it feels like than right now in 2024, and so like I felt like and maybe and this isn't I don't care about this, like I don't care that this is a thing. I'm just curious if you also saw this um I guess comparison. I kind of compared the um they're at the courthouse. I compared that to January 6th, right? And
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I
like
didn't
to
even think
me,
about that.
that's what I kind of felt like. And
Sure.
um some people storming like a hearing or like there's
Hmm.
riots and like don't do this, don't do that, so I kind of attributed to that, and so it feels like they're kind of pulling in some real world inspirations for things. um and I think it's pretty interesting, and I'm curious to see where things go. I do. I haven't read the articles. I've only seen like the thumbnail and the title of these articles, and I've like
Hmm.
half read them.
Hmm.
And it's like people are so upset about Wolverine and Morpho, and I'm like, I don't know what this is talking about.
Why?
Whatever. Well, I don't know this, but I think it's the scene where Morpho is like, "I'll help you reach those hard to reach places." When he's like, he pops his Morpho pops claws, and like he's in the steamy
Oh yeah,
bathroom
yeah,
with
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wolverine.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean,
I thought it was
I guess
funny.
there's an argument where it's kind of like, is this a sequel to the 90s show? And like, would they have done that in the 90s? But also I'm like, but it's 2024. And I personally just didn't give a shit personally. I was like,
No,
whatever.
no,
I was like,
that did
whatever.
not even
Who
register. I
cares?
thought it was funny and like, yeah,
That's
I
the
mean,
only thing I could think of. There
the
might be
people
another
that are
scene that
getting
I
mad
don't.
about that do not deserve to be listened to. They do not deserve to have their voices heard because they're
Yeah, I
just
mean,
it's just you're getting it's rage bait. It's just like
yeah,
people getting mad about something to get mad about something. What
I
those
don't know
people
this
honestly
either.
do, they just need to go to therapy because it's probably their lives that are actually shitty, not their problems with X-Men.
Well,
By the way, I did
well,
look up. Cable
yeah, yeah.
was in the animated series in season
Okay,
two. He
okay.
plays a pretty big role in like the virus storyline with the creation of
It makes
Apocalypse and
sense
stuff.
because again, X-Men was the hottest, obviously in the 90s,
Yeah,
and then Cable was and Deadpool were all made in the 90s. I don't know, has Deadpool ever been in the X-Men show? That's a great question
I don't.
because
I doubt it, but I
I
don't
doubt
know.
it too. Yeah, but let's look that up because
So what's
if they're gonna
funny
do
is,
it,
real quick, the only reason I even knew of Cable, because there was this game. I was going to a church when I was young, and the youth pastor was super into comics, and there was this game where you had like Marvel minifigures, and it was kind of like an RPG kind of thing, but it was like you like collect them, and they have certain powers, and you can like fight other people on this board. And they were like real small, like that big. And he just
you
like
talking about
gave.
X-Men Legends?
No, it wasn't just X-Men though. It was like all of Marvel characters, and it was
Oh,
a board game.
It's
It was a
called
board.
a board game. Okay, I
It
was
wasn't
gonna
a
say
video
Marvel
game.
Ultimate Alliance. Okay,
No,
sorry.
no, no. It was a board game, but it kind of like that. But it had like little action figures for it. They were like on little like instances on like little platform things so you can move around. Anyway, he just gave me the Cable one because he had an extra one, so he just gave it to me, and I like that was the only reason I ever knew who Cable was. I was like, oh, who's this guy? And it
Yeah,
was Cable, and it was
it's
yeah.
Matt's. If I think it might be Matt's favorite X-Men, and I got his first appearance of Cable CG Seed um
Oh, cool.
over a year ago, and so that's a cool little get. Um, but yeah, it looks like Deadpool has been in the show. At least Morpho has impersonated him. It looks like he was in 3 episodes of the animated
Uh,
universe series. Um, but I'm not sure if I would like to know
oh, this is
his. I like to watch those scenes 'cause I like to know his personality. Anyway, I've debated on watching the X-Men animated series just because I mean some people love it. Here's this is blasphemy. I've come to like it now. This is one of the last things I'm going to say, but I never liked the animated series intro growing up. I thought it was
mm,
annoying. I thought
mm,
and I think again, I think it just more so what it represented.
sure.
I like it now and respect it now, but I just never have loved that. And I guarantee that they're going to have some type of riff of that in Marvel Studios when X-Men comes out,
Sure.
the live action version, because we already got a hint of that with Charles Xavier in Multiverse of Madness. Um, and I'm curious to know how Deadpool and Wolverine shakes out this summer. So, but yeah, overall, I'm liking it, Daniel. I'm going to stick with it probably and just kind of see where it goes. I don't have a huge leg in the race, but more importantly, and there was like a Daily Bugle newspaper from like the animated series from Spider-Man
Mm-hmm.
in the opening episode.
Oh,
Um,
I missed that. That's really cool.
yeah, and I think they didn't have the hyphen in there for Spider-Man, and people are giving them shit for it, which they should because there's a hyphen in Spider-Man. Um,
Here, I want to
but
show you something real quick because I
do it.
found the figure I'm talking about, and I'm just going to share my screen. So, YouTube listeners, you're in for a treat. If you're a podcast listener, you're going to want to come over to youtube.com/241studios and check this out. So, I found the figure that it's from. It's from this weird board game. Can you see it?
Yeah, he's leaning over hardcore.
Yeah, but it's got this super weird base where you can like click it to mean different things. And it was
Yeah, I
like,
see that. It's
yeah,
complex, dude. There's like even like counter and everything.
yes, it was super complex. It was way too complex for me as a kid to even understand. Like I couldn't play it. I was like in like, 7th, 8th grade, and it was just like making my mind go crazy. But
Yeah, I
like
get
this,
it.
and I was trying to find the board game. I can't find it yet. Listeners, you can write into bit.ly/241mail if you want to let us know what this board game is from. I just know that it was like, and it may have not been actually a board. It may have just been like tiles you set out. I don't know. But I know that this guy I knew that had like cases of these characters, like he had probably hundreds of these from like every different character, and they all have different iterations. Like you could get like black suit Spider-Man and normal suit Spider-Man, all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
So if you can remember what this weird ass complicated board game that had like a twisty dial clicker on the bottom of the characters to like somehow indicate, it's probably like their health and their like, it's like speed, health, defense, like it looks like from those symbols. But let us know at bit.ly/241mail if you recognize this. Joel, I'm thinking about you right now because I think if anyone, it's you that might recognize this. And let us know what this board game is or what this is from. That would be awesome. Or let us know what else you thought about the episode. How are you feeling about X-Men 97? Is it the shit? I will say, my uncle was a huge X-Men 97 fan, and he was like in high school in the 90s. So it was like perfect era for him, and he is loving the show. So just as an anecdotal review from someone that the show was essentially made for, it seems like the people that are big 97 fans are really enjoying it, at least anecdotally. I'm sure there's people online that are mad about everything, but you know what? There's people online that are mad the world isn't flat. So I don't think we should acknowledge them, other than what I just said.
I'm mad the world's not flat. It'd be more interesting, probably.
Sure. Yeah, it would be.
That's my argument for that. Yeah, if you haven't ever reached out to us for our ability, you can do that or comment in the comment section below, youtube.com/241studios. I want everyone to know, like, Daniel sharing or anyone sharing an image on this podcast is, I'm not sure it's ever happened.
I don't know if we've ever shared our screen like on a podcast like this. Yeah. It's useful. It's like, why aren't we doing this more often? It's like, oh, this is quite easy.
Yeah. I've done it on 241 Joe Live where I would have
sure.
like its own section. As I was talking, I would be showing images and stuff, but I've never, I'm not sure we've ever done it on the podcast. So everyone, you are in for an exclusive as we approach episode 200 of Podcast 241 next week. The Doctor is back in the house with episode 199 as Daniel for the first time watches Ridley Scott's Alien, and we discuss it, we break it down at a script analysis level. And then to celebrate episode 200 of Podcast 241, we are diving into James Cameron's epic sequel called Aliens. And also Daniel has never seen that either. And so
I have now, I've got 20 minutes left. So I've mostly seen it. Yes.
Jeez, boy, 20. You stopped at 20
I
minutes
will
left.
say, it feels like an extended version. It felt a little long in the tooth.
I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear any of your fucking negative comments.
It kind of makes me want to watch the theatrical version to see if it would maybe the pacing would work for me better. You know what I mean? I when we get to the podcast, I'll be very interested in what was added. Yeah.
I know exactly what's added, and there's one scene in particular that you would be like, that has to fucking stay in the movie.
Sure.
And,
sure.
and I'd be
Yeah.
like, yes, it does. It has
Yeah.
to. And
But
we'll talk about that.
it's like watching this extended version, which is like the director's cut. I can just imagine all of the like producer like comments that they're just mad. Like, no, they can't be the first death halfway through the movie. We can't do that. You know, like all these like I'm sure I understand completely why they cut it down, but like also, yeah, anyway, it's just it's interesting because like this is one of the famous movies in terms of like director versus studio vision a little bit, and like, you know, I feel like this was, you know, in the 80s that was starting to happen more. I don't know, like, but in terms of like most people prefer the director's version of this, right? Like most people would tell you to watch the director's cut if they're Alien fans.
This is one of the few cases, Daniel, most people are correct. So I don't know where you're going with this, but
No, I'm just because it's like,
I mean, Bruce would if Bruce.
It's the first Snyder cut, right? To a degree, it's not, but it is. It's like
no, it's not. No, I mean, it's
you know,
it's extended cuts were a common thing at the time, especially for James Cameron. But
Sure.
yeah, we need to talk about that on episode 200, which everyone needs to watch episode 199 and this episode and 200 as we go into the next era of podcast 2-for-1.
Yep.
Anyway, I'm glad we watched X-Men 97. I will probably continue with it. Hopefully, Invincible's around the corner. Godzilla X Kong, the new Empire is out. We got Dune. Hopefully, talk about it at some point in our lives. And I'm excited. We got a lot of stuff to talk about again. But we had a little drought there for a second.
Yep. Yep.
And
Lots of stuff to be.
a little drought there. And no one knows that yet.
Nope.
So anyway, my name is Donovan Thompson.
I am Daniel Wingfield.
And we have spoken.